In my opinion, only 20% of being digital is technology related. 80% of being digital is the journey to overcome that change management of people and process.
Welcome to This is Digital, a podcast brought to you by West Monroe. Join us as we talk to leading experts about bringing the digital mindset to your organization.
Welcome to This is Digital, a podcast about leading with digital to win in the marketplace. I'm your host, Rissa Redden, Partner and Chief Marketing Officer at West Monroe. West Monroe is a digital services firm. We are thinkers and makers who bring hands-on experience and technical know-how to get things done and to deliver lasting value. On This is Digital, we are talking to experts about how to go about not just doing digital, but being digital. We'll be sharing stories of digital successes and digital failures. This podcast is for business leaders like you who don't want to miss out on the opportunities digital holds. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce our guest, Helen Yu. Helen is the author of Ascend Your Startup, Conquer the 5 Disconnects to Accelerate Growth, and founder and CEO of Tygon Advisory Group, which provides CXO as a service. Helen, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Rissa. Such a delight to be here with you today.
Thank you. Helen, you are a successful author and advisor to startups and to large corporations. I'd love to hear about your journey to success.
Thank you. I started my career as an accountant and financial analyst, learned to code as a Hyperion consultant, and went on to design and implement 400 plus financial planning applications, working alongside CFOs and CIOs. Then I ran an Oracle BI consulting practice post-Oracle acquisition, with the added pleasure of learning from then Oracle sales EVP, Keith Block. Under his tutelage, I learned the nuances of enterprise solution sales. And then I joined Adobe, learned about marketing and SaaS there. After that, I led the Startup to Scale Up Challenge at Marketo. So my journey led me to recognize the critical gap patterns in growth-driven technology startups, prompting me to become an entrepreneur of a startup accelerator 5 years ago. And growing up among 9 boys, my voice was not always heard. Writing became an outlet to be heard. And as you probably read my book, I was raised by my grandmother. Writing a book to honor the great resilience taught by grandmother has always been top of mind. So when pandemic hit, the company I worked with went through tough time. So that was a perfect timing for me to write my book.
Well, and Helen, that very much touched me to read about you dedicating the book to your grandmother. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and it's a very special relationship, and she must be so proud. And I wonder, you must be so proud of the accomplishment and the ability to honor her. Are there some memories that you have that you hold dear about the wisdom that your grandmother imparted?
Absolutely. Grandma always taught me to put other people's interests on top of my own. And so I became a servant leader, right, because of that. And also, before she passed away, I was the only one, the last 5 minutes, I was the only one by her bed. She said 3 things to me: stay special, make the world proud, and spread my ashes to a tall mountain. So that's the reason why I took the journey to Mount Everest Base Camp to spread her ash.
That's amazing. You mentioned, Helen, that you spend time with startups and you also spend time with Fortune 500 companies. What do they have in common? I think we think of them as being very different, but I would suspect that there might be some things more in common than we might believe.
As a matter of fact, when you look at a startup and established enterprise, what established enterprise has really well-defined product market fit and the sounding go-to-market strategy that get them to that repeatable success. Startups are oftentimes constantly, they are going through the stage of defining their product market fit, and then they're working hard to find that minimum viable repeatability. If you think about the startups, they all go through 3 key stages, right? Idea to product, product market, market to scale. So I think the enterprise or more established company, they're probably at that stage of more market to scale compared to a startup.
Before we dive into the specifics of your book, I would love to hear your perspective on what it means to be digital.
Well, digital to me is a new way of thinking. A few words come to mind when it comes to being digital, right? It's innovative, practical, iterative, and scalable. In my opinion, only 20% of being digital is technology related. 80% of being digital is the journey to overcome that change management of people and process.
We are very like-minded. We released a piece of signature research in August and found very much the same, that technology is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the puzzle, that so much is the mindset, it is habits, it is choices that you make every day that feed into your ability to be digital. So let's get into your book. You talk about conquering 5 disconnects to accelerate growth. Could you talk a little bit to us about those 5 disconnects?
Sure. Here are the 5 disconnects described in my book. The first one is product market fit disconnect. This is when the startups going through early stage from idea to product, they need to define their minimum viable product and crystallize what problems their products solve and for whom and why. And then you get to the defined minimum viable repeatability disconnect. This is one startup going through the second stage, product to market, right? This is when they define product category for go to market and a minimum viable team to achieve their goal. And then the micro moments in this, including product roadmap, initial product launch, setting up pricing structure to acquire their first hundreds revenue generating customers. And then the third disconnect is voice of customer disconnect. This is where you figure out the minimum viable repeatability through the active customer listening path. Mapping out customer journey could be a micro moment for this disconnect. And then the last 2 disconnect is process disconnect. Number 5 is the measurement disconnect. As you mentioned, Riza, you can do anything, but if it's not measurable, it does not really count. Right? It's a very critical for company to establish process for them to achieve the goal along the way and then make it measurable as well. I really like West Monroe. You talk about the measurable impact, right? It's not just about talking about strategy. Startup is the same as they go through each of the growth stage. The reason they have to uncover this disconnect because they can achieve the measurable result along the way. And you have to break them down into smaller parts in order to succeed.
I love that. And I'm so curious as well, Helen, when you think about entrepreneurship and there is a desire to be nimble and to react to changing market conditions, is it possible that at times startups can be too nimble because they're reacting to so many different factors in the marketplace?
They oftentimes are indeed very nimble. Sometimes they're too nimble. Sometimes overlook, right? Their overconfidence. I took on the journey to climb Mount Everest Base Camp. I was looking for a Sherpa, but many of the startups don't know what they don't know. They're oftentimes blindsided. What should they be doing? And then they became too nimble before they even see through the result. They switch gear already. Sometimes it's under pressure investor, sometimes it's under pressure funding, limited funding. But, a lot of things can be avoided. Have they really find a sherpa who can guide them through the journey? And sometimes the startups, they were not able to go through the last mile, right? As I give you an example, as I was climbing, 200 of people actually set out on the same journey, climbing this base camp. Only 3 of us made it. Part of the reason because the unpreparedness for that journey, that applies to business as well. A lot of times these startups, they set up a goal that's not achievable to begin with. And then under pressure from the investor, they had to switch gear. They hire the executive team, fire them, and then they think that they can really make it better after, switching people. The reality is a lot of times it's not, the switching people, switching team is about, do you even have the right strategy to begin with? Do you have a execution plan that aligns with your strategy? And can you state the course to really see through the result before you just switch. Sometimes the investors are not even understand. They're not in their day-to-day operations with you. So they may not understand the day-to-day and how to really optimize your execution. And then all they know is, here's your goal. You have to reach this, right? This is the point where finding a Sherpa is really important, because the Sherpa can guide you and help you uncover that disconnect, and then help you really either course correct or optimize your day-to-day operations, and then guide you through the difficult situation and overcome the challenge to succeed.
Something that you have written that I love is growth thrives at the intersection of tech and humanity. Could you talk a little bit about that? I feel like that's so in line with how we think about what it means to be digital, that there is a technology component, there's a human component to really help organizations thrive from a digital perspective.
Yeah, I really love what Wes Monroe mentioned right on your website. You talk about human-centered. The digital, you think about technology will defeat its purpose unless it really serves the better good of people. And I mentioned earlier, 80% of being digital is actually how you overcome that change management of people and process. Let's use an example here. Let's say Jessica, right? She is a customer success manager. She loves interacting with customers, but she does not really like the mundane task every single day. Imagine if technology can help automate some of the daily activities she does, and then allows her to free her up to do more things every single day, so she can spend more time, help the marketing leader strategize how to really engage with customer, and helps the sales leader to identify the sales upsell opportunity, expansion opportunities, and then interact with customers to add more value to customer activities or help customers grow their business. So that's, to me, is where the growth really happens, right? That's why I said, growth really thrives at the intersection of technology and humanity, because technology is a path to freedom, is a pathway to allow us to reach our greatest potential.
Agreed. A question for you. When you are coaching startups and when you are coaching Fortune 500 companies, how do you coach on digital strategy? How does digital show up in some of the conversations that you're having when you are focused on helping those businesses thrive?
We talk about digital all the time, but I usually ask leaders to step back, right? I say, let's just step back. Tell me, what are the problems you're trying to solve here? What are the business challenges? I always think two things, value exchange and progress, are the two things that's so critical for them, right? I said, let's talk about what value means to you, or what success look like to you. So I have them describe that to me in a macro level. And then we'll get into, I'll say, in order to achieve that goal, what has to be true, right? And then is that their function, sometimes I work with sales leader, marketing leader, or customer experience leader, and then sometimes the CEOs and founders, right? And then if you want to increase your sales by 20%, what does that mean, right? Is it single product line, multi-product line? What is the geographic location that you're talking about, right? What is customer segmentation we're talking about? Do you have a competition? Where do you have the most competition? So there's a lot of the discussions around. And then when you talk about digital, I ask them, how do you measure being digital, right? Because their definition of being digital might be very different from mine. It's all about spending the time to understand where they're at, right? We have to assess where they're at today and how far away are they from being digital or from being really reaching that goal. And then we said, let's break that down into smaller components, because you cannot boil the ocean, even though you try, right?
Helen, I had a conversation, you're reminding me of it, last week with Betsy Ziegler, who's the CEO of 1871, which is an accelerator in Chicago. And we were talking about how important it is to define the problem that you are trying to solve, and that the ability to articulate the problem in a meaningful way can be challenging for many What's been your experience as far as articulating a problem statement that then you work with your clients to solve?
I love 1871. I actually taught workshops there in over the years. So, to me, articulating the problem is really critical because I challenge the company or the leaders I work with to say, is the problem, because sometimes I ask them, hey, what do you really what is the problem you're trying to solve? And she'll say, or he'll say, I wanted to generate more pipeline, right? Let's say marketing, because you're a CMO, generate more pipeline. I said, why? And then then they'll say, hey, because our sales leader wanted to increase sales by 20% this year. And I said, why? I keep asking them why until to a point that they cannot answer. 80% of the time, they stuck. And then I said, wait a minute. What is the whole overarching company goal? You generate 20% sales, so what? So you keep asking them the questions until you get a point they start to say, wait a minute, why am I doing this? One example I can give it to you, right? At one company I work with, this is a company that's not so successful. The sales team underperformed that year. And all the people, customer-facing team, obviously were impacted. Their compensation were impacted, the bonus, everything, right? But the HR team, they received 120% bonus. And we had high attrition, turnover. You can imagine it was before pandemic. And then I was talking to this HR leader. I said, how come, the HR team got such a hefty bonus when everyone else is not? I said, how are you being measured? And then they explained to me they're being measured based on the number of people they are hired. I said, wait a minute, if that means a higher attrition rate would really give you incentive, because then you can hire, as you're only being measured based on how fast you backfill the open positions. That doesn't even make any sense. So that gives you an example. As a CEO, we're Marketo extremely successful because our CEO drive the overarching metrics at the company level. They're just going to say, we're going to measure entire company, regardless what role you play. Customer NPS as being one of them, and then sales performance as being two of them. And then there are a few other metrics, right? Commonly shared. Your engineering, you care about customer sat. Your sales, you care about customer sat. If you're marketing, you care about the sales performance as well. So that common metrics really brought us all together, right? It's measurable. Everybody really pay attention. And we also get transparency into the metrics on a monthly and quarterly basis. But then the other company, as I mentioned, each of them, cross-functional leader are driven for different metrics, is not aligned, is actually conflicting with each other, where you're not as successful. So I always say there's a reason for a company to be successful versus not being successful. Oftentimes it's really coming from the very top, right? The CEO and the founder, do they have a thorough understanding of how these metrics are interrelated, and then how they can give the functional leader the incentive to perform and driving toward the same goal is really critical.
I completely agree. The incentives need to be aligned. The metrics need to be aligned. Otherwise, you see some funny behaviors.
Absolutely.
Helen, thank you so much for joining this episode of This is Digital.
Thanks for listening to This is Digital. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow or subscribe on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget to leave us a review. For more information on This is Digital, visit westmonroe.com/thisisdigital.